This is the Best Health Podcast, brought to you by Wake Forest Baptist Health in partnership with MedCost.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Best Health Podcast, brought to you in partnership by MedCost. Glad that you are listening to this episode. Very interesting topic that we're going to be discussing today. And I want to begin by saying I want you guys to trust us, and I want you all to persevere and listen to the entire podcast. We have a very special guest today, and I know I say that a lot, but given the recent tragedy that has happened nationally with the tragic loss of Kobe Bryant and his daughter, with the helicopter crash in California, and then the subsequent seems like almost a 24-hour news cycle about that topic. I know tragedy, the idea of tragedy of loss has been talked about around my office lately. It's been talked about around my house recently, and I know there's more local tragic incidents that have happened more locally in our community as well. But that national incident, I think, has raised the conversation to a much higher level than maybe normal. So with me today is Chaplain Glenn Davis, and he is part of our FaithHealth program in ministry here that is part of Wake Forest Baptist Health. So welcome, Chaplain Davis.
It's good to be with you, Justin.
Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about a lot of really, really good information, and I'm really glad you're here to help us kind of dissect this and process this maybe often difficult topic to talk about, but really important topic to discuss and not necessarily just bottle up. But before we get into that, just start out by telling us a little bit about yourself. How you got into being a chaplain, how long you've been a chaplain, how you found yourself here at Wake Forest Baptist Health.
I'll be glad to. It's good to be with you, and I think this is an important topic. I've been at the medical center since 2016, having trained here as a chaplain quite a number of years ago. I now direct a first responder chaplaincy program that is part of the FaithHealth division, as you said. And our team's quite unique in that we are embedded with first responders out in the community. And unlike conventional chaplaincy, we are deployed to trauma as it occurs to help first responders in our city and our county, and also to deal with those in the hospital who are most at risk of sensory exposure. So we are privileged to work alongside the group we like to call our most valuable but vulnerable public servants.
Sure. Because
they are exposed to some things that most of us never have to see or deal with. But we have a 4-member team. Our program is hoping to grow, and we are privileged to do some really innovative work within the medical center and what we see as an investment in the public health of our community.
That's really helpful information. I hope that people listening will take a minute to go onto our website and search FaithHealth and search the first responder portion and learn more about that program. It is extremely valuable, and I've spoken to leadership in the first responder community in this area, and I know how much they appreciate this program. We could probably spend hours and hours talking about this. There's college classes on this. There's textbooks about how to, there's different approaches. I'm sure you can speak to this. There's a theological approach. There's a psychological approach, a mental health approach to dealing with tragedy. How certain people, their body physically responds. And you and your team, you see it every day, every week, if not every day, in one scenario or another. So I guess just talk us through if our family experiences this, or someone close to us, that we love. If when you're out there and you are in this scene as it's developing, what's the first thing that you do when a tragedy has occurred and you go out there and it's just people are maybe in shock or disbelief, or maybe just talk to us about that for a minute.
One of the first things you notice with all individuals who are impacted by trauma, whether they're a trained, seasoned first responder or just a resident in our community, is everyone's sense of vulnerability is threatened to some degree.
Yeah.
And that means their sense of safety and security are altered. And so the initial response is sometimes one of disbelief. What do we do next? An immediate need to connect to your support system. Mm-hmm. So it's not uncommon in the initial phases of any kind of traumatic event for people to want to find some anchor in their lives that makes them feel safer. And that usually is a call to a family member, a dear friend, a familiar voice. But I do think in those initial phases, people have to give themselves permission to know that that event is life-altering.
Yeah.
So again, there's a scale or magnitude about how these things can be more impactful, some more than others. But again, even a trained first responder has some awareness of how an event can impact them on a cognitive level, a physical level, emotionally, behaviorally, all these things.
Sure.
But that one area of fear, safety and security is tremendous. So what we would do, our team does routinely, is when we're out in the community responding to these events, we try to establish what that person's coping mechanisms are. Some people have good crisis resolution skills. A phrase we'll often use, determine quickly, either by just asking a question, or people will tell us by their behavior. They will almost define for them what a critical incident is by saying, I've never had to deal with anything like this before, or this is so unbelievable, surreal, and that gives us some indication that they really don't have any tool or tools in their toolbox to address that issue. But establishing support for them quickly is critical. But everyone has to understand, and I think give themselves some self-compassion, that this event is impacting me. If I can understand why that is happening, then I can better regain some sense of control. And I think that's one of the key places where, as we engage with people, we try to address that and normalize some of those emotions, and then how can we help restore that person to some equilibrium in their life, even though they have been wounded and certainly affected by this event. And the range of what we define as a critical incident is there's just a wide range of events that would qualify for that, and it really is subjective in terms of how people respond to that. Mm-hmm. And again, because of a person's job role, background, life experience, they're more equipped to deal with trauma than some others are.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting, and I'm glad you brought up this help them kind of regain a sense of control or equilibrium, because I could imagine, depending on what people feel is a tragic event in their lives or a traumatic event in their lives, that's maybe the first thing is they're just sitting there and they're feeling completely helpless about what just happened. So what are some practical steps or conversations that happen immediately after a tragic event that can help people process through that to where they go from a state of I don't even know how to function right now to okay, I can start taking baby steps. I can make immediate preparations for what just happened, or then I can start taking baby steps to do the things in my day-to-day life that I need to get done, eventually to start getting back to some sort of normalcy, if I dare use that word. So what's that initial couple of steps that you help them process through, or initial conversation that you have, or maybe it's just the first step is comforting, and then later on you start talk with them about maybe next steps of how for them to take a next step moving forward.
Good question. And so when I mentioned one of the key ways to help initially is to help reestablish some sense of safety, security. Your question brings up the other critical thing, and that's to provide them a place to ventilate and to validate what's happened to them.
Okay.
So with them being able to claim and own what's happened and acknowledge, give themselves permission to feel whatever it is they're feeling, any care provider has to understand that it's important to not discount that, to rush them toward healing, that we have to allow people in a very non-judgmental way to express whatever it is they need to say, to act as they need to act at that moment based on what's happened, and again provide the validating statements. Sometimes that's our presence, not abandoning them physically or emotionally abandoning them. But responding in ways that are constructive, and that begins the healing process. I think there's a tendency for all of us, and some of us are scripted this way, maybe males more than females, to rush through our grief or to internalize our pain, not express it. So if we work in a culture or a family or within a system where there's empathy and concern, compassion, where we see other people being vulnerable and we know that's okay, I think those are helpful signs. We see that our work a lot of times gets to expose how wellness stands out in a work environment, that people truly care for one another. So if that's pre-existing, if someone's pre-crisis level of functioning is such that they experience this level of caring, then when the trauma does occur, whatever that critical event is, that pays some real dividends. The person already feels valued. So responses of other people, whether those are ones that re-victimize us or re-traumatize us, or do they nurture us and give us permission? So one other way, just to give an example of that, is we know, and the research supports this, that trauma has a way of dumbing down our cognitive functioning. So stress really can improve performance dramatically in some initial phases, but when it becomes chronic, then our capacity to function well really drops off.
Interesting.
And we really don't concentrate as well, we don't make decisions as well, and that's really a critical time to be good to ourselves and for people around us, our peers, to acknowledge that we are not going to be performing at the level we were previously, because that's how this trauma has affected us.
Sure. And I think, just going back to the national conversation that's happened recently with the helicopter crash, and other tragedies that have happened in and around this area in the past, it causes pause, or at least it did for me, of what is there a way for, we're so busy and we have so many things come across our desk, our phones, we seem so busy / distracted with our day in and day out lives. I don't know if this is quantitative or if anyone has put this in any sort of measurement that how much time do we stop and pause and reflect each day, or think about kind of the bigger picture. And is there a way for us to prepare ourselves for a tragedy or a traumatic event, or kind of think ahead of what I would do in certain scenarios? Would you even recommend doing something like that?
Well, there are ways we can do that. You mentioned at the outset Kobe Bryant's death. So when we think of that tragedy and many others like it, that is amplified by constant news coverage and social media and all of this.
Yes.
And the irony is, I think that we can have instantaneous awareness of things that are happening, intellectual knowledge of it, but not be emotionally prepared to deal with it. We can also be incredibly lonely as we hear these things. We can have many social media connections, for example, but not be really in authentic relationships connected to people. So we can be grappling with this terrible news and the grief that triggers in us about our own grief, and yet be in a place where we don't have the human connections to process it. But there's constant incoming. So I think, to your point about how we can prepare, one thing is to try to strike a balance between what is appropriate vigilance, to be aware of what is happening around us, certainly to have empathy and compassion and be concerned, but to understand there's a difference between simply receiving this information and taking it in and trying to assimilate it and let that nurture other conversations with people that help us work through it. Mm-hmm. One saying our team operates with a lot is that trauma does not happen in a vacuum, that we don't have a clean slate or whiteboard that's where we're without stress in our lives. So all of these more urgent needs that pop up, or what impacts us personally, is usually on top of other things. So all of our personal stressors are amplified by these new events, and we're all in different places of what we're currently grieving now. So we're often are just overwhelmed by that one new thing, and particularly when it's protracted with an incident like that, and there is media saturation, but we're getting lots of information, but not many people are telling us what to do with it and how we can nurture one another at such times. And one way to do that is simply to be more forgiving of ourselves and others, to create spaces for those conversations, and particularly where there's no judgment and we don't impose our way of grieving on other people. What's helpful for one may not be for another, but for us to create an environment where we trust each other to discuss such things. So we've learned, and I think we all know this, that if you lessen the anxiety in any environment, you've increased the likelihood that people will be more trusting, and particularly with sharing anything that's uncomfortable or painful for them. We have a way of pushing that away, and I think our obsessive screen time, our attention spans, all these things, even with our own families, I think we all know that we can be physically present in a space, but the rest of us is not there. And that's not an environment in which to learn or comfort or console one another when we have these heavy events occurring around us.
Or build trust.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's such a key word. We're listening and talking with Chaplain Glenn Davis, Director of the First Responder Program within FaithHealth here at Wake Forest Baptist Health. And I think you touched on a really interesting part, Chaplain Davis, about we're very social digitally or electronically, but not necessarily investing in maybe authentic, real relationships all the time or as much as we used to. Maybe speak to how that can help build up a support network, an authentic support network around you that can be invaluable when tragedy does occur in someone's life.
Well, there's plenty of research now that shows that not having a support system, being lonely or suffering from loneliness, not a healthy degree of solitude, but actually being without support, is detrimental to our health. And a lot of the research is called loneliness the new smoking. But it really has an adverse effect on our mental health and our physical health. So for us to be receiving this incoming, news from all these sources, often that's bad, not positive, not affirming, and not have anywhere to share that or process it, that we have to do that solely on our own internally, that's not good for us. We know that we need support, and yet it's hard to cultivate it. One thing a workplace can do, I think, is provide, for lack of a better term, what we would just call pre-incident education. Mm-hmm. Was how can, particularly after a family, an individual, a group of people have experienced some traumatic event, how can they improve their capacity to deal with future events? Okay. So it's almost a secondary tragedy to not learn from those lessons and takeaways. What did this event, how we either coped constructively or destructively, how did that help us? What did it teach us that we can apply going forward? I think every critical event we manage to survive and resolve there's an opportunity there for our crisis resolution skills to be bumped up a notch. Yeah. And then we pay those forward, I think, with those around us. So it really is a cultural change, I think, a shift toward what it means to be more resilient and practice wellness. If you work in an environment like that, and I've said this to employees before in a lot of different places, that is a work benefit that's invaluable. If you truly have people in your workplace family who value one another as whole persons, and that we do help one another through these events, and don't pretend that we just have a toggle switch we can flip and work stays at work and home stays at home.
Very true.
These things travel with us, and they affect our behavior with one another, and our work performance. There are cost-effective reasons to address these things too, not just basic compassionate reasons.
Sure. And so let's take the scenario that we're part of someone's support network, right? So if I'm part of someone's support network, I think I've found I'll use myself as an example, and I found myself not being able to find the right words or what's the right thing to say after this traumatic incident has occurred or this tragedy has occurred in someone's life, and you go up and you at a basic level you put your arm around them and comfort them, but what's the right thing to say? Is there a right thing to say? I feel like, oh, it'll be okay. That's maybe de facto one of the first things that wants to come out of my mouth, but I'm like, is that maybe one of the worst things to say right now, because they're feeling maybe it's never going to be okay again? What in your training and in all the workshops and classes that you've put on, have you talked through maybe some of the basic communication pieces that you can talk with someone if you're part of someone's support network and you find yourself in that situation? What's the right thing to say? Is there a right thing to say?
Well, there definitely are good things to say, and a list of things you never want to say, although we all have inadvertently probably harmed people by our words or sometimes what we fail to do. But I think when people are in a state of shock, they're also forgiving and not paying attention always to all the extraneous words and happenings around them. But I think to be an advocate of doing the right thing, and sometimes our role is simply one of protecting those who have been injured. So if we're sick with the flu, we need people to give us some TLC and meds and bed rest, whatever.
Chicken soup.
We should treat people who are going through grief in a similar way and realize that they need a little extra protection now. We need to give them space.
Yeah.
They're not an emotional invalid because they're going through this event, but how can we be an advocate? And that often means how can we protect them from people who might demand more of them than they can give now, simply to protect them from potential further harm from someone else. In the case where someone has died, and I know family members do love to hear their loved one's name spoken.
Okay.
That's one basic thing. To understand that people, their energy levels, their capacity to respond and deal with life prior to the crisis has suddenly changed. So to help them conserve energy, to understand that they don't need judgment, they don't even need a lot of words. So to the basic part of your question, I think what can people do? As I mentioned earlier, there are two ways to abandon people, and one is to just physically turn away from them, to treat them as if they have some disease or we can't be around them. We quarantine them or something. But to be physically present with someone, to simply listen, and be a compassionate presence is a big thing. But we can emotionally abandon people too when we rush to change the subject. If they are letting us know, often in clear terms, that this is what they want to talk about, or I need to say this, not necessarily if you respond, but just let me say it. We need to allow that and not feel that my job is to be the cheerleader. I need to get you over this bad period or experience you're going through. And that's something people find difficult to do. They need to understand, though, that's very healing for someone just to say, you stuck it out with me. It's not what you said. You stayed close by. You were available to me, accessible, and didn't just shunned me at a time when I was going through this difficult period.
That's very encouraging. And I think that's what we want this podcast to accomplish, is not just to be for lack of a better term, a Debbie Downer podcast and talk about tragedy, but how can we process it? How can we help be a support network for those around us in our circle of influence that have dealt with it or are going to deal with it at some point? And then, we'll get to in a minute maybe positive silver linings that can come from tragedy. But before we get to that, I have one other quick question, just kind of dividing the timeline a little bit and wondering if you could speak to that so there's the immediate aftermath of tragedy, of a tragic event, a trauma, and then there's a little bit later down the road. And I'm going to make an assumption, and since you deal with first responders and you've worked with them for years and years and years, you've maybe seen or talked with people about PTSD. Are there resources out there if you start noticing that sometime after a tragedy or a traumatic event, people maybe start exhibiting some signs of PTSD? Are there resources or referrals that you can share where people can find some help?
Absolutely, and I think the hospital is blessed with those resources. So CareNet is a part of the FaithHealth division. So I look at it this way: there's a tier of resources, multi-tiered system, the immediate crisis response, and then for that group of people or individuals that I think is actually small compared to the larger numbers who, with expeditious, compassionate care, respond rather well and quickly to a lot of these events.
Okay.
But for those who are already predisposed to further harm because of a pre-existing crisis in their life, other issues, mental health concerns, there has to be this other tier of resources. And first responders are at risk for PTSD, as others are too. Again, their level of sensory exposure is very high on a frequent basis, so the intensity and duration of that, it can be remarkable at times, and their training and experience has prepared them to deal with that, more easily than just anyone else. But I think that that extra set of resources is crucial.
Sure. And I think you mentioned a great resource with FaithHealth. If anyone would like to find more information about that, just feel free to go to our website, wakehealth.edu, and search FaithHealth NC, or you can simply Google it. It'll pop up, or you can call 716-WAKE, and they'll get you in contact with the right people as well. So when you are out, I want to talk about this and see if we can frame it in the proper context. Oftentimes you're called out to work with first responders during a time of crisis or tragedy, traumatic event. But when we were talking earlier, I thought it was valuable that you brought up the idea of having fellowship with your circle of influence or your peer groups during times of non-tragedy, and how that can be so helpful, going back to the earlier topic of trust and kind of maybe having these walls that we as humans put up sometimes, tear down those walls. And I thought that was a really good point, and I wonder if you could speak to that for a minute.
Yeah, that's critical. And I think the way our team describes it is that we are embedded in the cultures we're serving. So to your point, it's very important to build trust in non-critical times and not just show up when the disaster or the traumatic event has occurred. And that's particularly important to remember with first responders, because to do the incredible work they do, they are actually trained to distrust what many of us would trust inappropriately. So they do see the world through a jaundiced eye. They're more careful, more vigilant, and that's true even of the people doing first responder-like work here in the medical center. Our security officers who protect and keep us safe here, they are scanning and noticing, observing things that the rest of us often take for granted. So that said, I think first responders as a family of public servants are slow to dispense trust because of the nature of their work. So when they do invest in you and do trust you, that is just extremely valuable. And when these critical events do occur, you already are a known entity. They would be far more resistant to someone just showing up at the time of tragedy who hasn't invested that relationship early on. But that's also true for all of us. I think we become incredibly and appropriately self-protective when we're injured, whatever that injury is. So we're going to be more discerning about who we let into our circle and who we talk to. So again, anything we can do early on and before these things happen to educate ourselves and our work cultures how to be more caring. How do we teach people to learn to actively listen and respond to really all kinds of crises that can occur in anyone's workplace. So, if I may say this, we can take an event that impacted the world, like Kobe Bryant's death, but then from that pause, sort of take a self-inventory, as you were saying earlier, Justin, to think about, well, what are all the other, just a myriad of things that happen in our lives that should also demand that we pause, to value the present, to look around us, to see people differently, stop looking at our screen so much, pay attention, make eye contact. Those are all ways we incrementally build trust with people.
Yes.
But it's not uncommon after these events for people to sort of reassess what am I doing that's meaningful? How do I want to change my life? And literally our worldview is altered by many of these events because they do give us that pause you mentioned to just look inward and say, am I living a meaningful life? Am I making a difference? Am I paying attention? Am I caring about the right things? And those are some of the redemptive outcomes from any tragedy. There's a spirit of altruism. We want to help more. Rank and titles sort of go away as people start to look at each other as fellow human beings who have all been wounded by something. And out of that, I think, grows sort of a shared, not just a history, but some new resilience that pays off the next time something occurs. There's bonds that last a lifetime because something terrible happened, but it brought out such good in people that in some cases individuals tell me they've never experienced that level of caring before, and they don't want to return to whatever their old life was, where that was missing.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And sometimes you wonder, or maybe I've wondered, at what point is it okay to stop? I guess maybe being reverent and quasi-silent and respectful, and start thinking about, okay, well, what conversation can come out of this? What difference can be made out of this tragedy? How can we collectively, as a society, as a community, as our circle of influence, however hyper local you want to make it to everyone that's listening, what difference can we make based on this tragic event that's occurred? And I think you touched on a couple of great points about, this sense of unity that happens oftentimes, sense of community, the sense of caring. And you heard a lot of, if you were paying attention to the media this week, I think a lot of people maybe saw video clips or listened to audio clips about, people that are on TV every day making those types of comments of, if this type of event causes you to call out and say, hey, you know what, you need to call your family and tell them you love them. You need to stop. You need to, you go home and hug your kids tighter tonight and look them in the face and tell them that you love them. So that on that very, I guess, basic level, for lack of a better term. But then there's more of this kind of community impact kind of feeling or movement that can come out of tragedies at times as well. And I'm sure you've seen that from time to time, especially from tragedies in the first responder world as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Well, it unites people. And it doesn't mean that all your differences and disagreements go away, but certainly for that period of time, you're much more aware of your common needs, your need for support, your ability to help each other. And there's, for all of these different behaviors to be put in place, there's a time window there that's really critical. I think if this is part of an initial response to these impactful events, it tends to have a contagion effect. People really want to pay it forward and model good behavior, change how they're living, responding to one another. If this grief isn't validated, if there's no recognition given to it, if we work in a place where we're sort of told, maybe we'll get back at it again, that productivity is more important than caring. Any of those messages are so counterproductive to people's healing. But I think there's that window I'm speaking about. I think the parallel would be the golden hour in medicine. There's a window in which if we don't respond appropriately and timely to people, they start to shut down. They don't feel cared for. Their perception is that if someone isn't around them, peers, family, colleagues, affirming that, hey, this event has affected you, we care about you and want to acknowledge that. If they don't feel some of that, then that whole set of emotions gets, I think, pushed inward and can become destructive.
Yeah. Well, we're talking with Chaplain Glenn Davis, and we're wrapping up here in a second. And I just want to thank you, Chaplain Davis, for being here. I know this has helped me kind of process through the recent events and help put a voice to processing through tragedy and trauma. And I hope people listening will listen through and get some takeaways from this podcast as well. I encourage people, if they're interested in finding out more about FaithHealth, they can go search FaithHealth through our website, and CareNet through our website as well. There's additional resources there for people should they need them. But as we're wrapping up, I think some of the key takeaways, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that I heard you, is tragedy happens in someone's life, and it can be, very hyper local or something on a national scale, such as the helicopter crash with Kobe and his daughter. It does. We should take pause. We should do an inventory. But if you're in someone's support network, I think you were saying, just being there is such a great comfort. Being there, number one, validating them, number two, actively listening. I picked up on that phrase that you mentioned, and I found a lot of value in what you were saying in that, actively listening. And for me, maybe that stuck with me because I don't feel like I have to come up with saying all the right things and keep talking and providing some sort of, the clouds are spreading amazing nugget of wisdom to help these people heal right away. That's not my job necessarily, but my job is to actively listen and just comfort, and to help them. And I think you're right. As a tragic event happens, that there is this sense of compassion and caring and unity that comes out the vast majority of the time, and people do find a silver lining. So I appreciate you being here, and I don't know if you have any kind of closing thoughts to share with people about being able to see that silver lining, and that there will be a tomorrow after the tragedy for them, and then a day after that, and to maybe not take that for granted.
Well, I think people find strength in being with people who are nurturing to them and people who show compassion to them, not again, to reiterate what you just said, that just have the right words, but that stay with them through the process, check on them, and so another thing to just keep in mind too is to realize that these emotions can revisit people after some time. I mean, just like grief, it's not a straight line, not a process that can be hurried. So whether these events are more localized or national, international, there are all kinds of triggers that can cause these emotions to come back with some force. And again, part of our own self-education, helping others, is to realize that that's quite normal, whether that's a date, a conversation, other things that will trigger memories and be difficult, but that simply respects the fact that it takes time, and time heals, as the old saying goes, but it's a half-truth, really. It's what we do at that time, how we invest in our own self-care and allow others to care for us. And I know I've learned, and my colleagues keep reminding one another, that it's a lot harder to be a care receiver than it is to be a caregiver sometimes. We're reluctant to allow others to care for us.
That's such a good point.
So we can't begin to care for those around us if we do not practice self-care.
Yeah.
And that's everybody around us is a beneficiary of our own investment in our well-being. And if that's mentored in the workplace, you can imagine how that can change a culture quickly. And people who feel valued are in a much better position to have a better outcome after all of these events. Because we know they're going to continue to happen. What we can control is at least trying to improve our capacity to deal with them and how to help each other.
Yeah, but that's two great closing points, and I think that is a good place to stop for today. And thanks everyone for listening, and appreciate you all staying with us through this podcast. And I want to thank Chaplain Glenn Davis for joining us today. If you all have any other questions, like I said, check out the website, wakehealth.edu, and you can also give us a call if you have any other questions or if you need any additional resources, 716-WAKE. So until we chat again, be well.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Best Health Podcast, brought to you by Wake Forest Baptist Health. For more wellness info, check out wakehealth.edu and follow us on social media. Wake Forest Baptist Health, the gold standard of healthcare.